Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. On the panel with me today is Mr. Doug Marks and Ms. Gisela Rempel. Our assessor today is Mr. Rodney Pontanilla, and our administrative person is Mr. Tristan Bredan. My name is Bill Moratsky. I will be chairing this meeting on the panel. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. Requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 7, 8, and 10 on our docket today. Mr. Bredan, please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony.
Certainly. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Rodrigo Pontanilla.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Grayson Sharples.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our first property on the docket today is item number 7, which is 1236 Manahan Avenue. And this is an application for revision of assessed value as well as liability and classification. Mr. Pontanilla, can you please begin your presentation?
I can. And I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Chair, that it's my understanding that the class and liability has been withdrawn. So it is a appeal based on quantum. I'm not sure if you wanted to confirm that for yourself, but that's my understanding, is that I had received the withdrawal forms from the Board of Revision on it.
Okay.
Okay, so if it's okay, I'll then...
I have that on my agenda still, that's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready and I'll proceed.
Yeah, please proceed.
Okay, so first off, we have file 24-758. The roll number is 0309-151-4800. The address is 1236 Manahan Avenue. The 2025 assessment has gone out at $880,000. And this is an industrial warehouse property that we're speaking of. It's a one-story building. It was built and its effective year is both in 2009 The land area is 11,929 square feet. And the total leasable area is 3,667 square feet. On page 2, I do have the pad eye view image of the subject property. On page 3, I have the pictometry overhead view of the subject property. On page 4, I have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And on page 5, I have some Google Street View images of the subject property from the 2019 map overlay. We have received requests for income and expense information, so we're okay there. We do have a sale for the subject property from August 1st, 2018 for a consideration and sworn value of $735,000 as well as a sales price. On page 8, I have included rent comparables for the subject property. These comparables are from market region 2 and 4. They do bracket the subject property and are under 15,000 square feet. And they are all of comparable use and layout to the subject property. And we can see that we do have leasable areas ranging from 2,700 square feet at the lower end up to 14,027 square feet at the higher end. And we do have rents ranging from $9.60 at the lower end up to $16 at the higher end. Of course, based on the size of the comparable. For the subject property, we have it listed as a storage warehouse. We do have it as one premise at 3,667 square feet at $12.50 per square foot. That gives us a total potential of $45,838. From there, we do have the model parameters for vacancy of 4.5%, a 3% expense, and a $4 shortfall per square foot. That brings us to a net operating income of $41,802. And then we have a 4.75% cap rate applied to give us the $880,000 assessed value. Following that, we do have an income value summary of the subject property. From there, we do have some information on our cap rates being applied. And we do have some information on industrial cap rates there. Following that, we have some Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then from there, we do have the subject property's income and expense mailer as it has been submitted. And that is my presentation. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I would like to note as well that your camera seems to have fallen down. Just so you're aware. But I thought I'd let you know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Applicant, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Yeah, just a few. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First one, I guess, just the cap rates. Looking at the table here on page 11,
Yep.
You'd agree that the assessed cap rate is quite a bit lower than all the industrial properties listed in this table.
Well, if you look at the 20th and 80th percentiles from that perspective, it does look to be on the lower end. I would bear in mind and make a note that the 20th and 80th percentiles are sort of the meaty range of where the cap rates have fallen into, but there are going to be some outliers based on characteristics. In this situation, the subject property is just under 4,000 square feet, and it is a newer build. If I'm not mistaken, it was built, I believe in 2009, we have it built as. So that could be the reason why it has a lower cap rate.
Okay. Believe that'll be all my questions for now. Thank you.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
I know my question was asked and answered. Thank you very much.
The income and expense mailer is on page 14, is that correct?
Yes, it is page 14.
So is that the actual net income there, 18,962, or is that interest supposed to be added to that?
There were some questions about the income and expense mailer. It was difficult to extract exactly how they were declaring the income and expenses of the subject property. That's why it was a little hard to rely and extract the information there. If I'm not mistaken, I think there were some storage, or maybe that's another subject that I'm thinking of there. Yeah, this one had some questions about just how they had declared their income and expenses. It was a little difficult to extract.
Okay, but looking at it, is my calculation accurate or close to accurate then?
I mean, they have declared 78,147 in gross rents. They list just insurance and property tax for some expenses, so we don't have any operating expenses there. Again, it was a little difficult. It's just the way that it's laid out to then extract what's needed to see how the model is sort of performing in comparison to it. It was hard to extract some information from it that was applicable.
Okay, what I'd like to know a little bit more information from what he's given you here.
Sure.
You put it in your brief. So yeah, he's got the 78,147 gross rental income.
Yep.
And then insurance and also interest and bank charges. Is that
We wouldn't consider that as expenses that we would apply to the subject, but that would be expenses that would be sort of, while they are related to the subject property in terms of the financing, they're not related to the operational expenses. So we wouldn't include that in
Okay.
our analysis for expenses.
So that was my original question. So you would then add that 40,000 to the net income to get
Theoretically,
apples to apples with what your model has, 58,000.
theoretically, that's correct. Yep. Yep, that's correct.
59,000. Okay. So in your model has 41,802.
That's correct.
So this is according to what they provided here in 2022, that exceeds what the model has provided.
Correct.
Okay. The cap rate you have at 4.75%.
Correct.
And you said that fits in with your industrial on page 11.
I mean, it falls into the outside range of the cap rates that are being displayed, but again, that's the 20th and 80th percentile. It's not all the cap rates. So there are going to be some outliers based on conditions. For this subject property, based on its size of 3,667 square feet combined with the actual year built of 2009, those could be the reasons why the model is applying a lower cap rate. So this one would fall out of the 20th and 80th percentile.
I see. Okay, I have no further questions then. And I'm sorry, Mr. Applicant, can you please tell me your name?
Grayson Sharples.
Mr. Sharples, can you please begin your presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will just make a note here that we have provided a rebuttal document as well. Would you like me to continue with our evidence first?
Yes, continue with your evidence first, please.
Okay. So we'll begin on page 3 of our submission. I'll give everyone a couple seconds to get there. So Just a brief description of the subject property. So again, it's a 3,667 square foot warehouse. The current assessment amount is for $880,000. And we are requesting that the board consider reducing this to $749,000. So page 2, we have what's provided from the City of Winnipeg website, the assessment website. And then page 5, we have the assessed income breakdown alongside our request. So we've kind of done two things in looking at this property. First, we took a look at the sales. We identified some comparables, and then our value based off that would be $740,000. We then took a look at the income approach as well. A slight adjustment was made to the rental rate from $12.50 to $12. And then with a cap rate of 5.35%, which we feel would be reasonable, we've calculated a value of $749,000. And so since this property was valued using the income approach, we've used that value, and that forms the basis of our request of $749,000. On page 6, we just have the assessment map and an overhead image of the property. And page 7 is just some street view photos. So on page 8, as mentioned, the first thing we did was we took a look at the sales. So we did try to look for newer buildings that were in the area. So these comparables are all relatively new based on the information we had, and they're a little bit bigger than the subject, but still fairly close in terms of size. And so these sales range from $141 per square foot up to just under $300. And so from that, we've got an average sale price of just over $200 per square foot. And so based on all this, it looks to us that the current assessment was too high and should be closer to that $200 square foot range. And so if we were to use that average price of $201.71 per square foot, that's where we've gotten the value of $739,682. And so that was rounded to $740,000 from the sales approach. And again, we have our request is based off the income. We've just taken a look at these sales as well. We believe it provides further support that the current assessment is too high. And then so we have some images of the comparables we've used. And those continue through to page 11. And so that's where we have the cap rate here. So the assessed cap rate at 4.75% is below everything that's been reported by third-party providers. And as we mentioned, it is outside of the typical range for the city of Winnipeg. I guess it is below that 20th percentile mark. This is a newer property. It is single tenanted, so we would consider this to be a single tenant A quality industrial property. So looking at that top line of the industrials here, Colliers is reporting 5.75 to 6.5% cap rates, CBRE 5.5 to 6.5, and then Cushman is 5.25 to 5.75. So based on all this, the cap rate should fall somewhere between 5.25 and 6%. Is what we were thinking there. And so on page 12, we've tried to provide a bit more support for this. And so we've taken the sales that we'd identified previously and done our best to try to estimate what the cap rate would have been on that sale. And so unfortunately, we don't have the financial information for all these comparable properties. So we have to do what we can to estimate the income. And so what we did, since we believe these are all comparable to the subject, we've used the requested rental rate of $12 per square foot, because we don't know how much these properties are actually generating. And then we've used vacancy expenses and op costs from the City of Winnipeg guidelines. And so from that, we've calculated an average cap rate of 5.85%, and the median there being 6.16%. So this does still support an increase to the cap rate. Again, the assessed rate was 4.75%. And so we have, using this along with the table on page 11, the cap rate we're requesting is 5.35%. And so that would be the 20th percentile number from the City of Winnipeg range. And we feel that this is reasonable to use the lower end of the range because this is a newer property. And we would note that the 5.35 would still be below what is being reported generally. And so we feel that this is an appropriate cap rate to use. It's on the lower end of the range. And this is a newer property. On page 13, we took a look at the rental rate. So it was pretty tough for us to find comparable leasing of newer warehouse properties in the area. So again, we really tried to focus on the year of construction of these, just because typically we see industrial properties that are a lot older. So these are lease listings that were found from different brokerages. And these they list, or the listed asking rental rate for these range from $10 to $14. And from that, it's an average rental rate of $11.93 per square foot. And so based on these comparables, we're requesting a rental rate of $12 per square foot. And then beginning on page 14, we have the street view photos of the comparables. And those photos continue through to page 16. And so just to summarize on page 17, we've looked at two different approaches. We took a look at the sales, and based on those, we determined the value should be around $740,000. We took a look at the income. This is based off a rental rate of $12 per square foot, a cap rate of 5.35%, and that got us to the value of $749,000. So our value from both approaches were pretty close here. I mean, they're just a $9,000 difference in these two. So we do believe that the value should fall in that area around $750,000. And we would ask the board to consider reducing the assessment accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pontanella, any questions for the applicant?
Just
on
one
his presentation?
Sure. Just one in regards to the rental rates that had been applied. So,
Sure.
Mr. Sharples, on page, I think it's 13 of your brief, where you had your rental rate table there. I'll give you a minute to get to it.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, so then we have the information provided. We have 18,532 square feet at $10.95 and 1,935 on the lower end at $14. The subject property is 3,667 square feet. Would you agree that there is an economy of scale there and that the lower end of these leasable areas command a higher price per square foot as opposed to the bigger properties?
I mean, yeah, based on those two comparables, that it appears to be the case. Yeah, I think you could make that argument in looking at these. Yeah, That's fair.
All right, thank you. That's really my only question that I had for you. Thanks.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Marks, any
And
questions?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Page 8. You're using your comparable sales approach. You have sale dates there ranging, one is June 2022, back to January 2017. Did you consider putting time adjustment values on those to bring it up to the 23 reference date?
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't do any time adjustments for any of these.
Okay. I have no further questions then. So was there a rebuttal that you had submitted?
There was, yes.
Two documents?
Yeah, there was, so one was for this property, and then another was for another property on this docket.
Okay, so 24,758, this property?
Yes.
Has everybody got it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you can begin your rebuttal then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just being on page 3 once again. So we've just taken a look at the rent comparables from page 8. And we just kind of made some notes. We believe some of these are not accurate comparables. So just kind of go through them here. The first one, 1340 Chevrier Boulevard. We agreed that that was a good comparable. $12 a square foot. So that does support the requested rental rate. It is right at that $12 per square foot. Next one, 1375 Dugald Road. So I see this is a 1-year lease, signed April 1st, 2022. So this would have expired on the valuation date. So again, I think we would, it is still valid in this case. However, this would have a new rental rate as of the valuation date. 1460 Clarence Ave, Unit 101. This appears to be office space. So we have a bit more information on this further on in the brief, but there's Cushman has a listing for office space at a very similar square footage. 475 Debat Street. This was a brand new property. So we see this, the lease was signed in 2020. Effective year built was 2020. So this is a brand new building. And the wall height here is 28 feet. So the subject property was 14 feet. So this property is brand new, twice the wall height of the subject. So we don't believe it to be as comparable. 91 Lawson Crez. So this was, we agreed that this is a good comparable as well. It is a little bit little bit older than the subject, being built in 1998. A little bit bigger in terms of size as well. But this does have a rental rate of $11.18. Next one is 1330 Chevrier Boulevard. So this appears to be an office lease as well. So it's a car finance and loan company that occupies this building. More on that in a couple seconds here as well. 110 Lawson. We agree that this seems to be a good comparable. Lease was signed in 2015, so it is a little bit older. But this was signed for $9.60 per square foot. And then finally 227 Lawson Crescent. So this is occupied by a recycling company. It's got heavy manufacturing zoning. So we believe this one to be less comparable to the subject as well. And so just a few to expand on some of those comments. So starting page 14, we've taken a look at 1460 Clarence Ave, Unit 101. So this is what I mentioned with the Cushman brochure. So we have the sign out front that says office space available for lease. And then we went and pulled up the brochure. And so 6,553 square feet of office space. That was slightly different square footage than the comparable lease that was provided. And that lease wasn't expiring until November of 2024 anyway. So I do believe this was for a different space, but it leads us to believe that these are office units. And so the other pages from this brochure are on pages 5 and 6. So they do have a few photos of the interior. We can see that this would be used as office space. And then the floor plan is on page 6. Page 7 at the top of the page here is 475 Debatts. So this is the one that was built in 2020, the brand new building with the wall height being twice as tall as the subject. And then 1330 Chevrier Boulevard. So this is Birchwood Credit. This is the one I mentioned was the car financing and loan company. And so on page 8, these are photos of the interior that were posted to Google by the owner. And so again, we just see the interior here. This appears to be office space. On page 10, this is where we've looked at 227 Lawson. And so this is, there's outdated street view imaging of the property. So the one at the top of the page here is from May 2019. And we can see the Urban Mine truck parked in front. The photo at the bottom was from June of 2023. And you see this sign on the building there still has this Urban Mine logo. So this lease, they have it noted here as 2021. So this was clearly a renewal by this Urban Mine company. And they are a metal recycling company. So we have a little bit on the page 11 here. So this is a metal recycling facility, and so they've got M3 zoning on this. It would be for heavy manufacturing. The subject property only has M2 zoning. And so we believe that them being a metal recycling company, they process scrap metal at their facilities and they would require M3 zoning. And so I don't think this company would be able to operate out of the subject property on Manahan Ave. So we think that makes this property and this lease less comparable to the subject. And so I guess to summarize on page 12 here, we again have our request of 749,000. We just believe some of the leasing comparables that were provided are not accurate comparables to the subject, and we would ask the board to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Assessor? Any questions on the rebuttal?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
And I haven't any questions.
I have no questions. Anything in summation, Mr. Pontanilla?
No, thanks. I believe I've presented all my information.
Anything in summation, Mr. Sharples?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
That will bring this property 1236 Manahan to close then. Proceed to item number 8 on our agenda, 1129 Fife Street. So on my agenda again, I have this is a application for a revision of the amount of the assessed value as well as liability and classification.
The class and liability should have been withdrawn for everything on this docket, Mr. Chair. I don't know if anyone can confirm that, but I believe those should have been submitted.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we have to keep it on the agenda, but it has been withdrawn.
Okay. And that is applying to all the properties today?
Correct.
Okay, we just have a application for revision of the amount of the assessed value then. And Mr. Pontanilla, can you begin your presentation, please?
I can. If you just give me 1 second. I thought I was ready, but I actually opened up the wrong file there. Okay. So up next, we have file 24-471. The roll number is 1405-228-3300. The address is 1129 Fife Street. The 2025 assessment has gone out at $1,113,000. Once again, we are speaking of an industrial warehouse property. We have 5 premises associated. It's a 1-story building, an actual year built and effective year built of 1968, a land area of 27,740 square feet, and a total leasable area of 10,150 square feet. On page 2, we can see the pad eye view image of the subject property. On page 3, we can see an overhead view of the subject property. And following that, we have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then we have, I have included, some Google Street View images from the 2021 map overlay of the subject property. We have received requests for income and expense information, so we're okay there. We do have 2 sales related with the subject property, but both aren't being considered in the valuation. And we have no property leases being displayed. For rent comparables, these rent comparables are from the same neighborhood cluster area as the subject property. And so we do have leasable areas ranging from 2,029 square feet at the lower end up to 10,800 square feet at the higher end. And then we do have leasable rates ranging from, it looks to be $6.50 at the lower end up to what appears to be $9 at the higher end. From there, we do have the income stream for the subject property. So we have 5 premises associated on the stream. We have leasable areas ranging from 1,675 square feet up to 3,300 square feet for a total of 10,150 square feet. And then we do have rents ranging from $6.19 at the lower end up to $6.54 at the higher end. The total potential rent is $65,138. And when you divide it by the total leasable area of 10,150 square feet, you do get a blended rate of $6.42 per square foot. From there, we do have model parameters of a 3.5% vacancy, a 3% expense, and a $4 shortfall per square foot. And that gives us a net operating income of 59,551 square feet. And then we do have a cap rate applied of 5.35% to give us our assessed value of $1,113,000. Following that, we do have an income value summary of the subject property. And then we do have the cap rate information provided. Following that, we do have the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then following that, we do have the 2022 income and expense mailer for the subject property. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sharples, any questions on the assessor's presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also go into this income and expense mailer a little bit. If we go to page 15, where we have the income statement here.
Yep.
You would agree that the basic rent they've reported here is less than what has been assessed?
That's correct.
Okay, and then, I mean, we've got the rent roll in here on page 19. So we have leasing from the subject property, but if we look at page, where was it? Page 7 with the subject property leases, it says no subject leases found.
Yep.
Could you maybe explain why none of those subject leases been found but we have the rent roll in the submission?
Sure. So typically what happens is that we include subject property information as leases when we have it clearly displayed as a net lease. So we do have the leasable information provided, the area, how much they're paying per month. And then you'll notice if you look at the subject's income and expense mailer, all of them that we have them listed as base rent, and then we have a common area estimate and a tax estimate, but we don't have an admin estimate for a recovery. So they are semi-gross in that sense. So that could be one of the reasons why the information was reviewed and then not included, because it is a semi-gross and not a net lease that's being displayed. So that would be one of the reasons why the information isn't being shown. But in regards to the mailer itself, since we are discussing it, the $60,606.22 total revenue, the blended rate on that is $6.02 per square foot. With the models being $6.42 per square foot, it seems like they're fairly close. Again, we do have an admin rate to speak of there that isn't being captured, but it would show that the model is at least within the range of the subject property.
Okay. Does that mean that these leases, like would they be excluded from the model then?
Well, I mean, the information is, it could be when we're doing the income and expense mailer analysis, they would be being logged in there, so to speak, but because they're not net leases, they might not have an effect on the model's rates. This starts to get into the nitty gritty of the model itself. So I'm not from the modeling department. It's an understanding that I have of how the model accepts the rents. So I would say if I'm being asked on it, probably that this would have been not included for analysis because they're not net leases. It looks to be semi-gross.
Okay. I believe that was all my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Rempel, any questions for the assessor?
No, thank you.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
Yes, just one, regarding the cap rate, you got it 5.35 on this particular property. What's the difference between, this property and last property? I mean, they're all basically warehousing and, I just thought it would be, the same on both properties.
Right. I understand. Well, we do have some differences in terms of this one and the last one that we spoke of. The last one, the property was built in 2009, whereas I believe for this subject property that we're speaking of now, the build on this one is 1968. So that would be a factor. As well, the subject property's total leasable area for the previous file that we spoke of was in the 3,000 range for total leasable area, whereas this subject property is 10,150 square feet. If I'm not mistaken, the subject property that we spoke of previously as well, I'm not sure. I'd have to look up the area to see if it's in the same neighborhood or not. It's escaping me right now, but there are some differences as to why the model would have a different cap rate applied.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, so again, on the cap rate, you got it on the lower end of the 20th percentile this time.
Yep,
But it is an almost 60-year-old property, correct?
that's correct.
Does that be a factor? Would that be a factor in choosing your cap rate?
It would. So even though the cap rate is older, there are inputs as the model is constantly being updated when new information is being provided based on a reference period. So as we have sales data, the sales data then has an effect on the cap rates that the model is then applying. So that modeled cap rate would have been from some sales information that was entered into the model, and then it would have been given a predicted value to keep it in line with other values that were being analyzed. So there are some reasons why the cap rate would be applied for that reason. And again, cap rates aren't uniform for every single property. There are variations, and those variations do then lead to variations in the cap rates being applied.
Okay, and also the square footage was quite a bit different than the first property. This is 10,000.
That's correct.
You outlined that as a reason why cap rate was lower on the previous one because of the size of it being small.
That's correct.
This one doesn't have that issue.
And that's why it has a higher cap rate.
But still putting it at the low end of the city of Winnipeg percentile. 20 to 80 percentile.
That's where it falls.
Okay. I have no further questions then. Mr. Sharples, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, just begin on page 3. So again, 10,150 square foot warehouse. It has an assessed year built of 1968. The current assessment is for $1,113,000. And we are requesting the board consider reducing that value to $921,000. On pages 4 and 5, we just have the assessed income breakdown. And page 6 is our request. So similar thing here. We took a look at the sales. The value we calculated based off the comparable sales was $1,016,000. And then the value we calculated from the income approach was $921,000. Again, that was based off an adjustment to the potential income, and then increasing the cap rate to 6%, which we'll get into in a bit. But again, we've requested our value based off the income approach calculation, just because that's what the assessment used. And so we are asking the board to consider reducing the value to $921,000. Once again, page 7 is the assessment map and overhead image. And page 8 is the street view photos. So page 9 is where we took a look at the sales. So these are all what we would consider to be comparable. I mean, some are a little bit smaller. Others are bigger. But overall, they're relatively close to the subject here. And these comparables, the sale prices range from, we got one at just over $70 per square foot, and our highest is at just over $120 per square foot. And so the assessment of our property is about 110. So we do believe that it's too high and should be closer to that average price of $100.14. And so if we were to apply that to the subject, the value would be that $1,016,413. Being on page 10, we have the street view images of these comparables. And those continue through to page 14. And so again, page 15, we've looked at the cap rate. So the assessed cap rate is 5.35%. Again, this is that 20th percentile, the lower end of this range provided by the city of Winnipeg. And given the year of construction, I mean, this is an older property. We would expect this to be kind of more in the middle of the range than on the lower end. This is not a new property. Nothing overly special about it. There doesn't appear to have been any renovations or anything. And so we would consider this a multi-tenant B. So looking at that second line of the industrials here, Colliers is reporting this from 6 to 7%, CBRE 6.5 to 7.5, and Cushman is 6 to 6.75. So all of these data providers are indicating cap rates above what has been assessed. And so based on what's being reported here, we think a cap rate of 6% would be reasonable. That would put it probably more in the 40th percentile of the Winnipeg range of cap rates, and that's the lower end of what's being reported by these third-party providers. It's even below CBRE's range of 6.5 to 7.5. And so similar thing on the following page 16 to what we did on the previous property, as we did a rough calculation to try to estimate what the cap rates would have been for the sales comparables we identified. And so again, without having all the financial information from these properties, we had to do our best to estimate this. And so for this one, what we did, we've used the assessed rental rate of $6.42 per square foot. That was what was assessed for the subject property. And since we consider these to be comparable to the subject, we would expect them to have a similar rental rate. And so from this, we've calculated cap rates for these sales from just under 5% to 8.28%. And from this, we get an average cap rate of 5.99%. And so that does align with the table on the previous page. It aligns with our requested cap rate. and it is still below or on the low end of the range reported by those third-party providers. Page 17, kind of made a comment on this earlier, but just looking at the financial statements they provided, their basic rental revenue has been noted to be $60,606, whereas the assessed was for $65,138. And so from this, we're just requesting a slight adjustment to that potential income just to reflect what the property is actually generating. So in summary, on page 18, we did take a look at the sales, and they indicated that the value should be a little bit lower. But our request is based off the income approach. That includes just adjusting the potential income to reflect the actual performance of the property. And then that is also adjusting the cap rate to 6%. We believe that the 5.35 is too low for this property. Again, the property is built in 1968. It's an older property. It should not fall on the lower end of cap rates. And so with that, we would request the board consider reducing the assessment value to $921,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pontanella, any questions for the applicant?
In regards to the cap rates, so the methodology is the same, Grayson? You're just estimating the rental rates and then extracting cap rates based on that? Just to confirm.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, no, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
No questions, please. Thank you. They've been answered already.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
I'm just wondering, the $60,606, which was reported on the mailer as the rental income, is that the actual rental income?
I believe so. Yeah, so that from it's what they've reported on their income statement. So yeah, for the 12 months ending December 31st, 2022, their rental revenue, their actual rental revenue was the $60,606.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Again, on page 9, you didn't adjust these sale price, your comparable sale prices for time.
No, we did not.
Further questions then? Anything in summation, Mr. Pontanilla?
I'm okay on summation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything in summation, Mr. Sharples?
I'm good as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That will conclude this property 1125 Fife Street then. So we will move to the next property on the docket, which is 862 Dufferin Avenue. And this is an application for revision of the assessed value. Mr. Pontanilla, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So up next, we have file 24-759. The roll number is 1400-281-4500. The address is 862 Dufferin Avenue. We have 2 streams on the subject property, a class 10 residential and a class 60 for commercial. On the class 10 residential, the assessed value went out at $108,000. And on the commercial side, it went out at $1,011,000 for a total assessed value of $1,119,000. Once again, this is an industrial property. We have 2 buildings associated with the subject, 3 premises associated, and it is a two-story building. We have an actual year built of 1903 and 1961 with the same for an effective year built. The total land area is 49,073 square feet, and the total leasable area is 16,206 square feet. On page 2, I have included a pad eye view image of the subject property. On page 3, there is a pictometry image of the subject property. Following that, we have a south-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then we do have some recent images from the 2024 Google Street View map, which shows the subject property. We can see the older component in the front and then the newer additional component along the back there. We have received requests for income and expense information, so we're okay there. And we're not showing any sales history nor any property leases associated with the subject. So for rent comparables, I have included industrial warehouse comparables. They're all storage warehouse comparables, and they are from the market region 6, similar to the subject property. We do have leasable areas ranging from 1,650 square feet at the lower end up to 19,000 square feet at the higher end. And we do have rates ranging from $7.45 at the lower end up to approximately $19.80 at the higher end. I have included some residential rent comparable information for the subject property in relation to other apartments within the neighborhood. All of the subject properties are within the neighborhood, or sorry, all of the comparables for the multifamilies, residential apartments are within the neighborhood for the subject property. And we can see some rents that range from $726 up to $873 at the higher end. And I would like to make a note as well that the subject property has a gross area reported of 22,483 square feet. And the model has it at $1,251.23 monthly. So as I was speaking about that, following that, we do have a income stream for the apartment stream for the subject property. We do have one unit as a multifamily. It's one 3-bedroom unit we have recorded on file. And we have that at a modeled rate of $1,251.23 per month, which gives us a total potential gross income of $15,015. Then from there, we do have model parameters of a 3.3% vacancy, a 52.45% expense rate, and which brings us to a net operating income of $6,904. From there, we do have a modeled cap rate applied of 6.4%. And that brings us to an assessed value on the apartment stream of $108,000. For the storage warehouse stream, we do have 3 premises associated. The areas range from 1,000 square feet at the lower end up to 11,833 square feet at the higher end. And then we do have rents ranging from $8.12 at the lower end up to $6.66 at the higher end. The total area showing is 16,206 square feet. And it actually looks to be, Mr. Chair, I'm just noticing now that there is a leasable area of 3,373 square feet applied that has no rental rate applied on there. I'm not really sure what happened there. Yeah, it's kind of escaping me there to explain why it generated in that fashion, but we'll move forward with what we have in front of us here. So $86,928 is the total potential rent from the top 2 premises, as there's no rent rate being applied on the 3rd premise. 16,206 square feet is the total area being displayed there. So that gives us, once from there, we go into the vacancy loss of 4%, a 3% expense, and a $4 shortfall. That brings us to a net operating income of $78,354. And then we have a modeled cap rate applied of 7.75%, which gives us the estimated assessed value of $1,011,000. Following that, on page 13, we do have a summary of the information that I've just provided. So you'll see both streams showing side by side and then the summary on the left-hand side. And we can see how we arrived at a $1,119,000 assessed value. On page 14, I do have some cap rate information that's provided in our briefs, and then the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts following that. And then following that, we do have the 2022 income and expense mailer for the subject property. And I believe that takes me to the end of my brief, and that is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sharples, any questions on the assessor's presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking for the multifamily comparables on page 10 here.
Yep.
The gross floor area listed there, the 22,000, that would be for the entire property, right? That like including the industrial portion?
That's a good question. I was also confused when I saw that size. I couldn't make sense of what the record was showing there, so I had to go with kind of what we had on file there. But that's a good observation. I haven't inspected the property myself, so I'm unable to explain why the gross area is at 22,483 square feet.
Okay, would that impact the model at all? Like, is the model thinking this is a 22,000 square foot apartment? Like, is that gonna impact that?
It's a little difficult to say exactly how that would impact. I would imagine there would be some effect to the value there, but it's difficult to say. So I don't have the information in front of me to verify exactly what the yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now to verify. If you just give me 1 second here, I'm just looking at one of my notes to see, because I did look into that myself. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Just seeing if I have anything written here. So I had made a note that actually we have on our file, we have 9,650 square feet as the total area for the subject property. That might make a little more sense, as it is a 3-bedroom unit that we have there, I guess, for the apartment side of it. But I have 9,650 square feet. So again, I'm not really sure why it generated here for the multifamily on this form, but the internal record that I'm looking at does show 9,650 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I have on my record there.
Okay. That still seems like a lot for.
It does. It does.
apartment,
I would
but-
agree that it does. But again, that's what we have on our records.
Okay. And then you just agreed that, I mean, the average rent per unit is quite a bit higher for the subject and the comparables.
From what the comparables are showing, it is on the higher end. I would agree to that.
Okay. Looking at the expenses that were filled out, they have the on page 17 here.
Yep.
They have the leasable area at 13,151.
That's correct.
And so that doesn't appear to be listed anywhere else in the document. Just looking at it, assessed it at 16,000 of industrial space. Do you know where this difference comes in?
I can speak to the fact that if we look at page 17, that it has been filled out as being partially owner occupied. From there, you'll note that the 13,151 square feet that's being displayed as a total leasable area. If you then go 2 pages forward to the tenant verification form, we actually have it listed at the bottom of 12,158 square feet as the total leasable area. So there are discrepancies as to, I guess, how accurate the mailer has been filled out. So I have to default to sort of just what we have on record as being the correct area for the subject property. It's a little difficult to say because even where they list that it's partially owner occupied, if you look on the tenant verification section, we actually see that all of them were listed as N for owner occupied. So I'm not sure. We also don't have an apartment mailer that was tacked on. So there's some questions I'm not sure. Perhaps the partially owner occupied space is, or perhaps the space that's being declared as partially owner occupied could be the apartment, especially considering that there are some tenants being shown there with leases. I'm just kind of piecing it together the best I can with the information that I have in front of me.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And that was kind of going to be my next question too, was whether this includes the residential portion or not.
This looks to be all just the commercial side of it for the tenant verification section.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
No, they've been answered, thank you.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
On page 17 on the mailer, so if it's partially owner occupied, I'm just talking in general terms here, not specific to this property. If it's partially owner occupied, leasable area does not necessarily mean what's actually leased, correct?
From my understanding, it would be the total area that is leasable. So it'd just be the total area that could be leasable for the subject property. That would be my understanding of that.
I just want to get at what that question on the form is actually asking. If it says totally leasable,
Yep.
and as an owner, I'm occupying part of it. For the purposes of this form, am I to include what I am occupying as well as leasable?
I would say that yes, that my interpretation of that section is that you would just include the total leasable area of the subject property.
Right, so that would include the total area of the property then.
That would be my
Regardless of
interpretation. Yep,
Yeah, regardless of whether you're occupying any part of it.
correct.
So this leasable area then is actually 16,000 something.
It could be where the difference is coming from. It's again, as I pointed out to the agent, there were some questions as to the accuracy of the information in the mailer, but I'm sort of just doing the best I can again with what we had in front of us here.
It just seems like there needs to be more specificity put on the form itself.
Right.
You know, because I could see in any situation that the owner would interpret that as, well, I'm not going to include what I'm living, the part that I'm occupying.
Yep,
Not
no, I
leasable.
understand.
Yeah. And that's all the questions I had.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
one question for me, if I could. On page 19, it's got a bit of a better breakdown as to what's being rented out and who's renting it. But there's still nothing on the residential portion. I'm just wondering where the residential portion falls into this whole scenario.
If you want me to take the lead on that, the information that I had included was just the information that was submitted. So it's impossible for me to determine what happened to that page. It just wasn't submitted when the mailer was submitted to the department.
On that page 19, they've got total leased area of 12,158 square feet.
That's correct.
And that includes 4 different businesses.
Yep.
But no residential.
No, and it even gets a little foggier underneath. You'll note that there is a breakdown as well for areas there. So we have, for example, for the top tenant, we do have the primary use as 5 at 224 square feet. The primary use 5 is, just let me zoom in here, office. So they have it broken down into office of 224 square feet, and then I guess 8 for the warehouse side at 8,460 square feet. Then we have the other business that's operating there at 228 square feet, and then we have another breakdown following that. So I believe that's where the added areas do equal out to 12,158, but again, we're missing the apartment side of it. We just don't have the information in front of us, so.
Thank you, no further questions.
Okay, if I can just ask one more on that basis, going back to your page 12 workup there for the warehouse portion.
Yep.
That third line, which you didn't know what was going on there.
Yep.
Could that be the size of the apartment as well?
I was thinking that that could have been the adjustment that was made on the stream at some point where it would have been taken out so that 11,833 plus that 1,000 would be 12,833. That could be where the difference is coming from, the 12,833. And then if you look at the declared size on page 1 of 13,151, there is 1,000 and something difference there in square footage. Perhaps that could account for the 3-bedroom area that wasn't declared. So that could be where that came from. And again, there's no rental rate on it, so there's no evaluation on it anyway, for all intents and purposes. Oh, you know what? And that would be I apologize. That would be I believe that would be actually the apartment side of it. No, you know what? The premise isn't lining up. Yeah, no, for all intents and purposes, we have no valuation on that, so it could just be deleted, really. It's not really providing any information.
Okay, so you're standing behind value of your potential rent value of 86,928.
Yep, because it just doesn't add. There's nothing on there with the zeros there. It makes no difference to what the model had it valued anyway. So
right. Okay. And that's all I have for questions. So, Mr. Sharples, you also had rebuttal on this property. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so if you can proceed to your presentation first, then.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So once again, I'll just begin on page 3 of our submission. So again, we had this listed as a 16,206 square foot warehouse property that does have the residential component. The assessed year built it was listed for us was 1957. I don't know if that's clearly been calculated using the 2 different portions with the 2 different years of construction. But the current assessment amount is for $1,119,000, and we're asking the board to consider reducing this to $757,000. So page 4 is the assessed income breakdown that we receive. I actually want to spend a bit of time on it based on what's popped up. So we don't see the premise ID breakdown for the storage warehouse for the 16,000 square feet. So we don't see that one of those spaces was 12,000 square feet. One was 1,000 and one was 3,300. And so this is also how we calculate the assessed rental rate. So we would take that potential income of 86,928 and divide it by that square feet. That's the 16,206. But if we have the 3,300 square feet that wasn't assessed, that would change our rental rate calculation. So without knowing the different premise IDs and breakdown of it, we had initially calculated that rental rate to be $5.36 per square foot. So we didn't know that 3,000 had a rent of $0 per square foot. So that kind of skewed our review of this property when we were under the impression that the rental rate was $5.36 per square foot, which we felt was reasonable, but that does not appear to be the case based on that 3,000 square feet that was assessed with a rate of 0. And so yeah, just I think that's all for the income breakdown that we received. But we have our requested assessment summarized on page 6. So we have the left column here is the total. We have the apartment in the middle and the storage warehouse on the right. So we felt all right about the apartment side of it. We haven't requested any changes to that. We had requested a different value for the industrial portion based off sales. And so that did lead to an adjustment down to 648,000. And so that plus the 108,000 apartment portion is how we've arrived at our requested value of 757,000. Once again, page 7 is just the assessment and overhead images and a few property photos on page 8. So on page 9, we've taken a look at the sales. And so this is just for the industrial portion. And so the industrial portion, that the assessed amount for that was just over $1 million. That equated to $62.38 per square foot. We have the sales at the table at the top of the page is similar properties along Dufferin Ave. And again, acknowledging that the top one, 770 Dufferin, sold in January 2022, and then again a year later in 2023. But we also have 516 to 530 Dufferin, sold in 2020 at $56.40 per square foot. 684 Dufferin sold July 2018 at just over $50 per square foot. And then 851 Dufferin sold in 2017 for $48.45 per square foot. And so from that, we got an average of $39.81 per square foot, which is quite a bit lower than what was assessed. And then the table in the bottom of the page, we've pulled additional sales from the area. These also support a value closer to that $40 per square foot. So these range from all the way from $20 to just over $60 per square foot. And so based off both these two sales tables, it does appear to us that this industrial portion should be valued at $40 a square foot. And so we've taken that and multiplied it by the 16,206 square feet to get a value for the industrial portion of 648,240. And again, that's assuming that the industrial area is the 16,206 square feet. So we've come to learn that maybe this is closer to 12,000, maybe it's closer to 13,000, and that would impact the value, obviously. Again, just make a comment that we didn't have the breakdown of the premise IDs. So this could be including the residential portion. We just don't know. And then we have images of these comparables being on page 10. And those continue all the way through to page 14. And so again, we have our summary on page 15, and we hadn't had any issues with the apartment side of things. We were just looking at the capitalized value of that warehouse portion based on the sales. Again, we hadn't requested any changes to the rental rate because based on what we had been provided, we assumed the applied rental rate was $5.36 per square foot. That is not correct. Now that we've gotten the premise ID breakdown, we can see that the one space was $6.66 per square foot, and the 1,000 square feet was at $8.12 per square foot. So we just we feel that we weren't provided with enough information to do a proper review here. The rental rate we were assuming was used has not been used, and so we feel that based off all this, that there is an issue with the current assessment. We are requesting the value of the industrial portion be changed based on the sales, with the apartment side being unchanged. We would ask the board to consider reducing the current assessment value to $757,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Pontanilla, any questions on the applicant's presentation?
No questions, thank you.
Rempel, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Marks, any questions?
Yes, is this suite occupied at this time?
Is the residential portion, or which
Yes,
which
that's
portion?
right.
I can't say with certainty. I would assume that it is the owner who occupies that residential space, as Mr. Pontanilla mentioned. That's my best guess, but again, based on the information they've provided, that's unclear.
Have you visited this property?
I have not, no.
Thank you. No further questions.
Regarding discrepancies in the area or the lack of information that you had asserted from the assessor. So are you disputing that 536 square foot then? Because that's what the assessor has, 16,206 at 536.
Yeah, no. So we believe that rate would be reasonable, but that rate also includes this 3,373 square feet that was assessed with nothing. So, I mean, we feel that the potential rent of 86,928 would only be for that, whatever it would be, 13,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so just in looking at page 12 of the assessor's submission, the 11,800 square feet space was at $6.66 per square foot, and the 1,000 square foot space was at $8.12 per square foot. So yeah, we're not challenging the $5.36 per square foot, but it doesn't look like it is $5.36 per square foot based on that.
You think it should be less?
Well, I think it looks like it's been more. I mean, just because the 3,000 square feet of space is included in that calculation for the $5.36, even though it hasn't been assessed with a rental rate. So that I think that would be lowering the rental rate, because I mean, if we had like if we pulled the 3,373 out of that calculation, I mean, here I could do it quickly. So yeah, if we pulled those 3,000 square feet out, the leasable area would be 12,833. And so with the, call it $87,000 in potential rent, if that was divided by the 12,000 square feet, that'd be a rental rate of $6.77 per square foot.
Mhm.
And so we were under the impression that it was the 5.36, and we felt that was reasonable.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So you're saying that you didn't even go with the income approach because of that.
Yeah, correct. We didn't, that's why we don't have leasing comparables in our submission, because we were under the impression it was $5.36, and that would be reasonable in our opinion.
Did somebody want to say something? No? Okay. I have no further questions. Just yeah, just one more, just a very small one. It seems like the total that comes up to 756,000. You got 1,000. You got 757,000. 648 plus 108 is 756.
Yes.
Wondering why you have it 757.
Yeah, that's a good question. It looks like, so those the spreadsheets we use, that final estimated market value column, we have a formula in there already to either round it up or down. What it looks like, yeah, it looks like it was just a rounding thing going from the capitalized value to the estimated market value. You're right. Based on that, it would be 756,000. I guess it just, yeah, it's a rounding thing.
Okay. And now you have a rebuttal.
Yes, we do.
Everybody there? I assume that's yes. I don't hear anything.
Okay. So once again, just begin on page 3 of this submission. So just looking at the rent comparables for the industrial portion. So the first one here, 595 Wall Street. This is in a different market area. We don't have the actual map of the industrial market regions included. I know Mr. Puntlia did mention that it was in the same area. We would just consider the Dufferin one to be kind of in the central market area, and some of these are a little bit farther outside of that range. We do have maps on the following pages, but 595 Wall Street, 1344 Spruce. These are a little bit further away from the subject. Third one down, 688 Dufferin Ave. That one kind of jumped out at us just with the rental rate being so much higher than all the other comparables at $19.81. We looked at that one. It's a service garage, so we don't feel like that's comparable to a warehouse property. 812 Wall Street is the next one. Similar to the first few, just a little bit further away from the subject property. 702 Scotland, we have a handful of them here. We have units A, B, and then C and D. These are a little bit further away from the subject, and these also appear to be a different property type, which we'll get into in the following pages. 1000 Alexander Ave. This appears to be a reasonably comparable, I guess. And then the last one here, 396 Daly Street North. Again, this is just further away from the subject property. And so, as mentioned, the following pages we kind of have the maps here. So the top of page 4 here, 595 Wall Street. We have the pin put in there for it, and the star is where the subject property is. So again, I don't have the assessment methodology map. I perhaps should have included that, but I'd say the subject is kind of in the central market region, whereas Wall Street here is closer to St. James. Similar thing to 1344 Spruce Street at the bottom of the page. Page 5 at the top here. So this is 688 Dufferin Ave. So this is the service garage I'd mentioned. So this is an auto service shop. $812 Wall Street at the bottom of that page. Very similar to the first Wall Street comparable that we had. On page 9, so this is where we have 702 Scotland Ave. So this was where they had the 3 separate leases. It was Unit A, Unit B, and then Unit C and D. And so this is, not only is this in a different market area than the subject, at the bottom of the page here, we have the tenants listed. And so the 3 tenants in this building, Vogue Fit. So that's noted to be an aerial sports center. We then have the Catholic Women's League of Canada. They've mentioned this is a religious organization. And then the third tenant is Holland Financial, a financial planner. So we would assume this would be an office lease. Perhaps the same thing with the Catholic Women's League, and then Aerial Sports Center. We don't believe any of these leases to be comparable warehouse leases. On page 7 there, we just have a note that we thought 1000 Alexander Ave was a good comparable. But then also on this page here, we have 396 Daly Street North. So again, this property is pretty far away from our subject. And so again, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't provide our own leasing comparables because we were under the impression the rental rate was $5.36 per square foot. And then we believe that a lot of these leases that have been provided as comparables are not actually comparable to the subject property. And we would ask the board to take this into consideration in coming to a decision here. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pontanella, any questions on the rebuttal?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Marks, any questions on the rebuttal?
None for me at this time, thank you.
Ms. Rempel, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Anything in summation, Mr. Pontanella?
No submission for me, thank you.
Anything in summation, Mr. Sharples?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really quickly about the leasable area here is we feel that the information that we were provided. I'm not blaming Mr. Pontanilla for this. That's just how the website spits out the information for us. But we were led to believe that the assessed rental rate was one thing, and that appears to be a little bit different once we've had the opportunity to review this. And we would just ask the board to consider all of that in determining the value here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This will conclude item 10, 862 Dufferin. And we have now heard all of the items scheduled this afternoon, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, panel members. Thank you, Grayson.
Yeah, my apologies.
Thank you, everyone. Merry
Slight
Christmas.
delay at the beginning.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy holidays to
Christmas.
everyone too.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye-bye.